Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to Sip&Talk.
Hey, welcome back. We have a really interesting fact to chew on today. And our whole mission here, as always, is to give you that shortcut.
Right, to get to the clarity without you having to wade through all the noise.
Exactly. You know, we had a bunch of listeners ask us to really dig into that Hong Kong fire incident. And the more we looked into it, the more disturbing it got.
It's one of those stories where the initial tragedy is horrific, but then the aftermath, that's where you find the really shocking part.
Exactly.
I mean, for me, the most dramatic, almost unbelievable detail was seeing citizens who were spontaneously offering humanitarian aid.
You're helping people.
Just basic human kindness. And that was officially labeled as an illegal assembly and even a national security threat.
That's the collision right there.
Yeah.
It's a brutal clash between the system and, just basic human nature. Our research made it really clear that the whole logic of governance in Hong Kong has shifted.
Massively.
It's gone from the rule of law that everyone associated with the city for decades to this mainland China model of, what's it called? Stability maintenance.
Stability maintenance, or Weiwen. And this fire is the perfect tragic case study. When the Tai Po fire happened in 2025, you had hundreds of regular people just showing up to hand out supplies.
Right.
They were threatened with arrest under the illegal assembly law.
It just forces you to ask the question. In a place that critics are now calling the city of fear, what isn't an illegal assembly? If saving lives, if providing comfort after a disaster gets you on the national security radar, what's left?
That's the core of it. This approach shows a system that views any spontaneous action, anything not organized by the government, as a potential political threat. It means that even the most fundamental human act of mutual aid has to be suppressed as part of the stability doctrine.
And that's the central paradox we need to unpack. The government claims it's all in the pursuit of stability and security.
Yeah.
But the methods they use, the systematic suppression, it just creates a much deeper, more pervasive social fear.
To the point where international bodies have started to use language like crimes against humanity to describe the patterns.
And we can't forget the other side of this, which is what this case means as a warning. It's a showcase of a governance model. We have to break down what it means for Hong Kong's future under the Patriots ruling Hong Kong policy.
And what it means for Taiwan and really for the rest of the world watching this happen.
So today, we're following this thread. We're starting with one event, the fire. But it pulls on this much younger story about governance. And that story has huge global implications.
Exactly. We'll be looking at the Hong Kong fire and asking, why was humanitarian aid criminalized? We'll dig into how that illegal assembly law has been weaponized.
Then we're going to ask if that authoritarian stability logic is just inherently on a collision course with human nature. We'll explore that critique of the city of fear.
And finally, we'll talk about the ultimate warning this sends to Taiwan and the world. We'll analyze what it means when even the simple, symbolic candlelight of a vigil is extinguished.
So we're going to walk you through this from three angles today. The system, the human response, and the global warning. We'll try to connect the dots and make sense of the logic behind it all. So let's get into it. System clash. Critiquing Hong Kong as a city of fear.
Okay, so let's set the scene with the hard facts of the disaster itself. The fire broke out on November 26, 2025. It tore through the Kwong Fuk Court residential towers in Tai Po, which are, about 40 years old.
And it escalated fast. It hit level 5, which is the most severe warning level for a fire in Hong Kong.
The worst since the Garley building tragedy back in 1996. So we're talking about a once-in-a-generation disaster.
The speed, though, that's what's so horrifying when you read the reports. Multiple towers were just engulfed in flames in less than 10 minutes.
Yeah, that kind of spread. It doesn't just happen. That's not a normal fire in a modern building. It screams that something was fundamentally wrong with the building materials or the construction.
Right. It demands a real explanation. And almost immediately, the government provided one. Or, more accurately, they provided a distraction.
A huge one. The deflection was immediate. You had official government statements, which were then amplified like crazy by mainland Chinese state media and, armies of online trolls.
And they all pointed the finger at one thing.
The traditional Hong Kong bamboo scaffolding, the jukpang, they immediately started calling it primitive, a relic of colonialism, and of course, fire-prone.
And the proposed solution was, what, to just ban it and switch everything to metal scaffolding?
Immediately. That was the narrative. That this was the key to safety, a forced, full switch to modern metal scaffolding.
Okay, we have to analyze that because it feels like such a deliberate political move. Bamboo scaffolding is iconic to Hong Kong's skyline. They've been using it forever. Why go after it so hard?
Well, it's the perfect scapegoat, isn't it? If you can blame the bamboo, you shift the entire conversation away from your own institutional failures, from corruption, from failed inspections, and you pin it on a symbol of Hong Kong's unique identity, something you can label as backward and in need of mainland-style modernization.
So it's a political attack disguised as a safety measure.
Pretty much, but when you look at the actual facts, the narrative just falls apart. Bamboo is not the problem here. In fact, it has some serious advantages, which is why it's still used.
Like what? I mean, beyond just tradition.
Well, for starters, cost. It's way cheaper. We're talking 1/3 to maybe 1/2 the price of metal scaffolding. That makes regular building maintenance affordable for more people.
Okay, that's a big deal in a city as expensive as Hong Kong.
A huge deal. And then there's the weight. It's incredibly lightweight, which is essential when you're working on these super tall skyscrapers where you can't just get heavy cranes into tight spaces. It's faster to put up, it's more flexible, and, it's a local craft that employs thousands of skilled workers.
And what about the fire risk? Is there any truth to that at all?
Historically, no. The data shows that bamboo scaffolding has been used for more than a century without ever being the primary structural cause of a catastrophic fire like this.
So it doesn't just go up like a matchstick.
Not at all. When it's properly treated with fire-resistant coatings, which is standard practice, it can actually resist fire for 30 to 60 minutes.
Wow, that's a significant amount of time in a fire. That's evacuation time.
Exactly. It's valuable time. So this whole political push to switch to metal, it would actually be a disaster for the local economy. You're looking at a cost increase of 20 to 50% for any project.
Which would just get passed on to residents.
Of course. And it would be way less efficient because metal is 5 times heavier. You'd probably kill this incredible local industry and just end up importing mainland workers to assemble the heavier metal frames. It was a purely political fix that ignored decades of engineering reality.
So if the bamboo scaffolding was just a convenient lie, the distraction, let's dig into what actually happened. What was the real culprit that turned this building into a death trap?
The real story is, it's a lot messier. It points to a total institutional collapse. We're talking about rampant bid rigging, the practice known as YBU.
Where contractors collude to fix the bidding process.
Precisely. That, plus layers upon layers of subcontracting, and at the bottom of it all, criminally substandard materials being used for a major renovation of the building.
Okay, tell us about the materials. What was the specific failure that acted as the accelerant?
The main accelerant, according to investigators, was found in the materials they used to seal the windows. They confirmed that the perimeters of the new windows had been sealed using polystyrene foam boards.
Polystyrene, like styrofoam.
Essentially, yes. The director of fire services himself went on record. He called this extremely unusual and unprofessional. This stuff is highly, highly volatile. It's a cheap insulator, not a fire barrier. It's like lining your window frames with solid gasoline.
So you can just picture it. A fire starts somewhere on the outside of the building. Maybe it's a dropped cigarette, maybe sparks from some work being done. It catches the protective netting that's everywhere.
Right, the netting catches first, the fire climbs, then it hits these polystyrene boards around the windows.
And that's when the physics of the disaster just take over.
That's the ignition point. The foam boards ignite almost instantly, and they produce this incredibly intense, localized heat right up against the glass.
So the glass just can't take that kind of thermal shock.
Exactly. The heat causes the apartment windows to shatter almost simultaneously across multiple floors. And once that glass is gone, you have an open pathway. The fire rushes into the apartments.
And then it has a source of oxygen from inside.
A huge source. And it turns the building's internal stairwells and elevator shafts into a massive flue. That's the dreaded chimney effect. It just sucks the fire and heat upwards like a blowtorch, engulfing floor after floor in minutes.
That description, the glass shattering, the fire rushing in, it's terrifyingly similar to other major high-rise fires we've seen around the world.
It's an identical pattern. It links this tragedy directly to the Grenfell Tower fire in London,
where it was the flammable exterior cladding.
Right. And also the Jiuzhou Road fire in Shanghai, which was caused by a faulty insulation layer. The common thread every single time is the cheap, flammable skin of the building. The coating, the netting, the insulation, it's never the core structural scaffolding.
So focusing on the bamboo was, it was a calculated effort to distract from the fact that it was actually poor governance and corruption that acted as the real accelerant here.
Without a doubt.
And the failure of governance, it leads us straight to the ugly intersection of politics and business, what they call political and business collusion. Let's talk about the company that won this big maintenance contract, Wang Yi Construction.
Yeah, Wang Yi Construction Engineering Company. Their record on safety and ethics wasn't just bad, it was abysmal.
Okay, lay it out for us.
In their relatively short history, they'd already racked up at least 17 separate recorded safety violations. This resulted in fines of over 340,000 Hong Kong dollars just between 2016 and 2024.
That's a lot of fines.
It is. And that's not even the worst of it. Going back a bit further, a former shareholder of the company was convicted in 2007 for bribing staff at the Housing Society.
So there's a history of actual criminal corruption.
A documented history. And on top of that, they were actually suspended for a short time in 2024 for violating building ordinances.
It seems literally impossible that a company with that many red flags, bribery convictions, safety violations, a suspension, could land a massive multi-million-dollar public works contract. How on earth did they win the bid?
Well, this is where the whole thing just stinks of collusion. Despite this horrendous track record, Wang Yi was personally recommended for this 330 million Hong Kong dollar project by the legal body's consultant.
And who is this consultant?
A woman named Wang Piqiu. And she's a key figure here. She's not just a consultant. She's a pro-Beijing politician, a district councillor from the DIB party.
The DIB, that's the biggest pro-establishment party in Hong Kong, right?
The biggest and most influential. The Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong. Their endorsement carries huge political weight in any kind of municipal or legislative affair. So her recommendation wasn't just a suggestion, it was a powerful, politicized endorsement.
So you have this political heavyweight pushing a contractor with a dangerous and corrupt history. Okay. But surely the bid had to be financially competitive, at least.
Not even close. And this is what feels like the financial smoking gun. Wang Yi's winning bid was 150 million Hong Kong dollars more expensive than their competitors.
Wait. They were more expensive by that much.
$150 million more. It's a staggering difference for a maintenance job. It completely defies any and all standard procurement logic.
There's no way that happens in a fair system. The only way you win a contract when your bid is that much higher is if someone is pulling strings.
The only logical explanation is that the political recommendation from Wang Piqiu completely overrode any financial or safety checks and balances that were supposed to be in place.
This just paints a perfect picture of that corrupt feedback loop you mentioned. The politician gets the incredibly high-priced, high-profit contract for the substandard company.
Right.
So what did the company do in return? What was the payback?
The quid pro quo seems pretty clear from the record. Immediately after this, Wang Yi Construction was found to have nominated pro-establishment candidates for the Legislative Council elections in 2025.
There it is.
It's a straight-up exchange of favors. You give us access to huge public contracts with very little oversight, and we'll give you guaranteed political support. This is the kind of entrenched corruption that leads directly to people cutting corners and using deadly, cheap materials to maximize that profit.
So the final piece of this whole systemic failure puzzle, the regulatory bodies that are supposed to prevent this just vanished.
Completely. They were missing in action. Residents had actually tried to raise the alarm. They reported concerns about the safety of the materials being used a full month before the fire.
And what happened?
Nothing. Both the buildings department and the fire services failed to intervene. They didn't investigate the complaints. That inaction, that systemic neglect, what they call sing share, that was the final failure that allowed the corruption to turn into a mass casualty event.
And it wasn't an isolated problem, was it?
Not at all. The proof of how widespread this was came after the tragedy. Suddenly, management teams at other housing estates all over the city were in a panic, rushing to tear down their own substandard netting because they feared the exact same thing could happen to them.
Wow.
Yeah. There were even reports of people testing some of the removed netting, and it would just instantly catch fire. It was a known, ignored systemic risk.
So after you see this complete failure of the system to protect its own people, we get to the immediate aftermath. And this is where you see the basic human desire to help kick in. But it's also where the story pivots from one of systemic corruption to one of systematic political suppression.
The initial human response was just incredible. You had hundreds of ordinary people, small local businesses, NGOs, they all just mobilized on their own spontaneously.
Completely spontaneously. They set up these material stations on the main platform of the Krong Phuc estate, organizing everything you could think of. baby supplies, medicine, food, clothing, for all the people who had just lost everything.
It's a perfect example of what a resilient civil society does in a crisis. Mutual aid in action.
Absolutely. But that kind of spontaneous organization, that show of capability and strengths outside of government control, in the Wei-Win playbook, that's not a solution. That is the problem.
Because they can't control it.
Precisely. And so the government's response wasn't to help them or coordinate, it was to interfere. And that interference came mainly from these government-funded care teams, the U's.
Right. These were teams that were set up to be like community liaisons, right?
That was the idea.
Yeah.
But in this situation, they acted more like political gatekeepers.
It was aggressive. These care teams showed up even though they were already being criticized by residents for just doing check-ins, basically just showing up for photo ops rather than providing any actual substantial help.
So it was about performance, not aid.
And their main goal seemed to be a power grab. They demanded that the citizen-run stations be handed over to them. They wanted to take control of the aid, monopolize the credit, and, most importantly, control the physical space and the narrative.
They wanted to be the only ones seen to be helping. And what if the volunteers, the citizens who actually organized all this, what if they refused to hand it all over?
That's where the escalation became just terrifying. The care teams explicitly threatened to call the police and report the volunteers for organizing an illegal assembly.
Let that sink in. You have people sorting blankets and baby formula for their neighbors who just lost their homes, and they're being threatened with arrest.
It shows you how fast that political mandate to maintain control just overrides any kind of humanitarian impulse.
And this wasn't just some local officials getting overzealous. This went right to the top, didn't it?
It escalated very quickly. First, the police came and cordoned off the entire site, demanding that the volunteers clear out. But the really critical, symbolic moment was when the National Security Department's chief superintendent, Lee Kwai-wah, came to inspect the site himself.
His presence changes everything.
It confirms this is no longer a disaster relief issue handled by the fire department. It's now officially a national security concern.
And what was the stated reason? What was the security concern with people handing out food?
The official line from him was that they needed to maintain high vigilance to prevent black violence elements from using the disaster relief as a cover to cause disruption or, quote, anti-China chaos.
That's the standard playbook, isn't it? You take something that is completely non-political, a universally recognized good act neighbors helping neighbors, and you preemptively brand it as a potential incubator for subversion.
It's a chilling logic. Any gathering that happens on its own, especially one that organizes resources more effectively than the state-backed teams, is seen as an uncontrollable variable. And in this system, uncontrollable variables have to be shut down before they can even potentially evolve into a site for political criticism.
And they have the legal tool ready to do just that. This is where that old colonial-era law comes into play. The Public Order Ordinance.
Yep, Chapter 245, specifically Section 17.
Now, this law was originally designed to deal with riots, right? Going all the way back to the 1967 riots. How do you possibly stretch a riot law to cover a relief station?
Historically, Section 17 makes it a crime for any gathering of 3 or more people to meet without getting prior police approval. In the old common law system, it was mostly used reactively. You'd use it against a large protest that turned violent, something that was clearly a riot.
But that's not how it's being used now.
Not at all. In the post-national security law era, this ordinance has been completely transformed.
Into what?
It's now the primary weapon for what you could call preemptive political suppression, or ANO. The new security doctrine requires the government to treat potential instability as an actual existential threat.
So it doesn't matter what people are doing.
The intent is irrelevant. So a logistical hub of a few dozen people handing out water is treated, legally, exactly the same as a massive political demonstration calling for the government to step down. The only thing that matters is that the gathering is uncontrolled by the state.
The system is fundamentally designed to fear its own citizens organizing themselves.
Absolutely. Think about the money. The government spends around 340 million Hong Kong dollars a year on these care teams. That money isn't for effective care, it's an investment in control. It's to make sure no alternative citizen-led structure can ever take root and show them up.
Which is exactly what happened. The observers on the ground said the citizen volunteers were 100 times better at providing relief.
But they had to be shut down. Because in this system, efficiency is a distant second to absolute control.
And what happened when the citizens tried to voice their concerns? I read that they came up with a few basic rational demands.
They did. The volunteers and the victims, they articulated 4 fundamental demands. Things like, accountability for the officials responsible and an independent inquiry into the corruption.
Just basic calls for justice and transparency.
And for doing that, one of the people who initiated the call for demands was immediately detained on suspicion of incitement.
Unbelievable.
That's the final lock on the system. It defines any criticism, any call for answers, even after a catastrophic event caused by government negligence, as a form of anti-China chaos that has to be crushed.
And that perfectly defines that shift you talked about at the start. It's a move away from a common law system that reacts to actual crimes to this proactive Weiwen posture that seeks to eliminate all potential sources of instability, even if that instability is just grief and a desire for better government.
It is the absolute definition of one country, one system governance. A system where the political mandate of loyalty, the patriots ruling Hong Kong principle, has now completely and totally overridden the mandate for competent, efficient, or even humane governance. So this criminalization of simple mutual aid, it's really just one symptom, albeit a terrifying one, of a much broader, systematic dehumanization that's happening. And this is what's leading to that powerful critique of Hong Kong becoming a city of fear.
Yeah, and this isn't an accidental process. It's not just things falling apart. It's a systematic dismantling of civic society. I mean, the numbers are stark. Over 300 media outlets and non-governmental organizations have been forced to close since the national security law was implemented.
It creates a vacuum, a public square that's suddenly empty. And that silence is filled with self-censorship and a kind of collective quietness, because speaking out is just too risky.
And that suppression isn't just happening on the streets or in newsrooms. It's being enforced through the judicial system itself, which has been really weaponized. It's a form of political cleansing that's disguised as legal procedure.
I think the clearest and most important example of that weaponization has to be the 47 pro-democracy activists case. We really need to break this down because it shows just how far the legal definitions have been stretched.
I agree. So what exactly were these 27 people accused of?
They were charged with conspiracy to commit subversion under the national security law. But their conspiracy, their plot, was to participate in a primary election.
An election.
Yes. Their goal was to win a majority of seats in the legislature, the 35-plus goal, and then they planned to use the veto power that is explicitly granted to the legislature in Hong Kong's own basic law.
So wait, let me get this straight. They were charged with subversion for planning to use a constitutional power, a check and balance that was written into the city's own mini-constitution to hold the executive branch accountable.
That's exactly it. The prosecution's argument was that the mere plan to use their legal constitutional right to veto the budget was tantamount to a plot to paralyze the government and therefore commit subversion.
That sets an unbelievable precedent. It basically defines the normal function of a democratic opposition as a criminal conspiracy against the state.
It's a game changer. It means that political intent, even if your actions are perfectly legal, can be treated as a crime. And the physical consequences of this legal strategy are devastating for the people involved.
Right, it's not just about the final verdict.
Not at all. The system weaponizes the process itself. Time and detention become the punishment. You have major figures like Benny Tai and Joshua Wong who have been convicted, but before any trial, they faced years of pretrial detention.
I saw the average for NSL cases is over 2 years.
It is. So that's punishment delivered before conviction. You're removed from society, you're silenced, you're financially ruined, all for the crime of intending to participate in peaceful politics.
The courts have effectively become the enforcement arm of that political Weiwen mandate.
They have. The law is being used consistently, systematically, to eliminate peaceful political opposition. And that's why you see international observers and the sources we've looked at using such incredibly strong language to describe this trend.
Okay, before we get to that final, really critical conclusion, we need to talk about the other layer here. The way this tragedy was instantly co-opted and used in the global information war.
Oh, absolutely. The fire became immediate fodder for external info ops. We saw 2 distinct waves of political exploitation online right away.
The first one was just blatant trolling from the mainland, right?
Blatant cruel. Chinese mainland social media networks were filled with posts mocking the fire victims. And just like the Hong Kong government's distraction, their focus was on the bamboo scaffolding as a symbol of Hong Kong's backwardness.
And the mockery was designed to dehumanize, wasn't it? It was genuinely grotesque.
It crossed a line into just pure cruelty. You had state-aligned media outlets like the People's Daily posting what they called dark humor. There was this one deleted post that made a reference to eating char siu, Cantonese barbecue pork, alongside pictures of the fire.
That's just vile.
The comment sections were filled with people celebrating, saying things like, the victims were Hong Kongers turned char siu. It's a horrifying loss of basic empathy, all designed to deflect blame from the real issue of regulatory failure and to sow division.
And that leads to the second layer, which was much more insidious. The cognitive warfare campaign, specifically targeting the relationship between Hong Kong and Taiwan.
This is the really deceptive stuff, designed to break the solidarity between them. There was clear evidence of fake accounts popping up on platforms popular in Taiwan, like Threads and Facebook, and these accounts were impersonating Taiwanese citizens.
And what were they posting?
They were posting messages mocking the fire. They used very specific cultural references to make it seem authentic, comparing the high-rise fire to the Taipei 101 fireworks or to the Infinite Castle from the hugely popular anime Demon Slayer, which is known for its spectacular destruction.
Why use those references? And why pretend to be Taiwanese? What's the goal?
The cultural references are chosen to resonate with a younger audience, to make the tragedy seem unreal, almost like entertainment. It normalizes the horror. But the main psychological goal of impersonating Taiwanese people is to destroy that historical bond of sympathy and shared values between the two places.
So if people in Hong Kong see these posts and believe that people in Taiwan are celebrating their suffering,
it drives a wedge right between them. It isolates both populations and makes them feel like they're alone, making them less resistant to this expanding governance model.
And was there proof these accounts were fake?
Yes. When these accounts were investigated, the IP address analysis pointed strongly back toward mainland China. It confirmed this wasn't random trolling. It was a calculated, state-aligned operation using a human tragedy to achieve a political goal of division.
So we've walked through the material corruption, the legal suppression, and now the information warfare. When you put it all together, what is the ultimate warning that this whole situation sends to the rest of the world?
The conclusion is pretty stark. Hong Kong is, without a doubt, the CCP's test field. This crisis is a demonstration of their governance expansion model in action, and it should show the international community that the systematic suppression of basic human rights, including the right to just gather and help your neighbors without fear, that cannot be dismissed as just an internal affair.
And for Taiwan, specifically, watching this unfold right next door, it has to be the clearest possible warning of what assimilation under that model would actually look like.
It is the ultimate cautionary tale of what peaceful unification actually entails in practice. Taiwan cannot afford to underestimate how quickly and systematically fundamental liberties can be erased under the one-system framework.
And this case shows that one of the very first freedoms to go is the freedom of assembly.
It's the first casualty. As this case proves, once the right to stand together, to organize spontaneously for any reason, is gone, then any form of meaningful political resistance becomes impossible.
Let's circle back one last time to that word, systematic. The sources you mentioned are definitive that this is more than just a case of bad governance.
Yes. The systematic nature of the legal abuse, the suppression of the press, the arbitrary use of pretrial detention, and, crucially, the specific criminalization of a humanitarian act. All of this together meets the criteria for systematic persecution.
And that's a specific legal term.
It is. It's the threshold defined under the Rome Statute, which is the framework used by international bodies to define crimes against humanity. When a governing system consistently uses all its tools, its laws, its courts, its police to suppress peaceful political life, journalism, and charity, and does it not randomly, but as a matter of policy, it signals a structure that is fundamentally opposed to universal human rights. And that systematic nature, that's the final global warning.
This was definitely an essential but very heavy discussion. We've really broken down these brutal clashes.
Yeah.
The clash between political control and just basic human nature, the conflict between, superficial safety slogans and deeply rooted corruption, and that fight between local self-help and an official power grab driven by that Wei-Win stability mandate.
We followed the evidence all the way from the specific point of failure, those cheap, flammable polystyrene boards, up through the chain of political collusion that made using them profitable, and then finally to the legal formwork that punishes the people who tried to help the victims. It's a complete closed loop of institutional failure and political suppression.
So we want to leave you, our listener, with one final thought to mull over from all this. The true safety and the true resilience of a city. It's not found in whether its scaffolding is made of metal or bamboo. It's found in a just system. It's found in the guaranteed freedom for people to care for one another without fearing that they'll be arrested for it.
So the question to ask yourself is, what essential institution or right in your own life, the freedom to assemble, the right to speak freely, the right to petition your government, do you maybe take for granted? And how could it be weaponized in a similar shift, a shift toward prioritizing absolute political stability above everything else?
We've presented this analysis today from, we hope, an objective international perspective. Our aim is only to discuss the facts, the systematic patterns, and the logical conclusions to encourage you to think for yourself.
We don't criticize any people or any nation. We only analyze the systems of governance and how they measure up against global standards of human rights.
Thank you so much for taking this pretty profound journey with us today.
And please subscribe to Sip and Talk so you don't miss our next conversation.
And hey, for a much-needed change of pace after all this heavy material, you have got to check out our old friend Mickey's YouTube channel. It's called Mickey to Life. He finally dropped his 6th Europe travel vlog. It is full of that signature Mickey humor that can really lighten the mood.
We could all use that right about now.
We definitely could. Hey, Mickey, you better pay us for the shout-out, huh? We'll catch you all next time.